What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's Wells Fargo Championship, another designated event, or as my buddy Patrick McDonald has been coining, another Desi. Yeah, that might catch on. I could work with that. So absolutely stacked field. We are getting John Rahm taking the week off. Very nice of him to let someone else win. We are getting Scotty Scheffler taking the week off, but Rory McIlroy back in action and basically everybody else. So we'll look through the data for Quail Hollow, the golf course, and the field and see what we can find. I will also note officially, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but officially, I'll be at the PGA Tour, or excuse me, at the PGA Championship in Rochester this year. So I'm planning on probably getting in Monday night-ish. So if anybody's going to be out there and want to say hello, happy to meet up. Very much looking forward to seeing Oak Hill in all its glory. Other than that, I think we'll just rock it. Let's start. Let's go. Quail Hollow, yes. It's a big boy course. Demands ball striking. Prefers distance. Couple of notes before we get into this. Remember that last year, so 2022, this event was not played at Quail Hollow. It was reserved for the President's Cup at the end of the year. So we played TPC Potomac last year. That's where Max Homa won. And then in 2017, Quail Hollow was the host for the PGA Championship. So they played the Wells Fargo Championship at Eagle Point. So 2017 and 2022 Wells Fargo Championships were not at this golf course. So keep that in mind when you are looking at tournament history. There's a difference between tournament history and course history. Here's the golf course. And I mentioned it's a big boy course, 7,500 yards on the scorecard. It's a par 71. If you do look at the scorecard, you'll see, I mean, there's a 249 yard par 3, 208, 190 on the other ones. You'll see some of these par 4s stretching out to over 500 yards. I mean, it's a big boy course. You're going to want to hit it a long way. You're going to want to be an elite ball striker. And that is really what the regression model on my website, RickRunGood.com, is also pointing out. Driving distance, 15th, means that there's only 14 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule where driving distance is more important. Strokes gained off the tee, however, so that's a combination of distance and accuracy, obviously, and how much you gain towards the field, is 7th, which means there's only 6 other courses in which strokes gained off the tee is more correlated to success. And then 12th for strokes gained approach, which means, again, there's only 11 other courses in which strokes gained approach is more correlated to success. Those are the big ones. So we are looking for ball strikers, ideally longer hitters. That's also going to come into play for strokes gained off the tee. You're not going to hit a ton of greens around here, a below average green regulation rate. So I'd prefer that you have a little bit of moxie around the greens, right? I don't think you need to be Hideki Matsuyama, Justin Thomas, Patrick Reed. I think you just need to be like average or slightly above average. You need to be able to keep yourself in play there. And historically, this golf course can play pretty difficult, right? Being a par 71, if it gets to double digits under par, that would probably win it, right? I think the last time we were here, Rory McIlroy won it at 10 under. Homa won it 2 years prior, because the other thing is we didn't have this event in 2020, so we've got some missing Quail Hollow Wells Fargo history around here. So Homa won it in 2019, 15 under, 12 under the year before, 10 under the year before that. So it's unlikely for this thing to get to like 20 under par. The other thing that's kind of interesting here when you look at the other stats that are correlated, and I put the major ones over here in this chart, but the table has just like every stat that is available, and you can kind of decide whether you think this is important or not. Bounce back. So that is how often do you make a birdie after you make a bogey is pretty highly correlated. Now, I rarely see that stat pop up here, and I don't think it's anything predictive. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's predictive, but I do think that it is showing you like you're going to make some bogeys out here. Right? This is a hard golf course. You're going to make some bogeys. The guys that are able to kind of quickly erase that have had better success than other guys here at this golf course. I'm not going to put everything in the world on bounce back, obviously, but I thought that was an interesting little nugget, and it passes the eye test for me and also makes sense. You look at the other stats. What does it all look like, right? Strokes gained off the tee, driving distance, club head speed. This is a long iron golf course. You know, I do not Always love the proximity buckets, but it is true that, a larger percentage of shots are coming from 175 yards and further than most courses on the PGA Tour schedule, or the average course on the PGA Tour schedule. So certainly worth a look there. Now, if you take all this stuff at the top of the key stats model and we scroll down and we apply that to the last 36 rounds played by every single golfer, you'll see who gets the best adjusted fit. And I think it's a little bit of a surprise to see Patrick Cantlay getting such a good adjusted fit number. I think when we dive into Patrick Cantlay in a second, you're going to be surprised at how well he's playing. Very surprised by how well he's playing. So he is actually the top adjusted fit golfer. He gets a big boost for the way that he drives it. He's well-rounded. He's longer than average. He gets boosts basically everywhere. Tony Finau and Rory McIlroy are 2 and 3. That's what we would have expected, right? If I came in here and said, give me who you think is best fit for this golf course, we would have guessed Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau right out of the gate. Terrell Hatton is 4th. Jason Day, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Taylor Moore, Justin Thomas. So those are like your top 10 or so. You can continue to read down and you can adjust this for any number of rounds that you want. But those are the types of golfers that we're looking for. Let's see if we can go find some. All right, 4 golfers over $10,000. Rory McIlroy 11-1, Xander 10-7, Patrick Cantlay 10-5, Tony Finau at 10-2. So what do we do here? Well, we have not seen Rory McIlroy since his miscut at the Masters. Will there be a level of pause on Rory McIlroy? TBD. We'll know more, especially Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time when we do the live chat here on the Rick Run Good YouTube channel. We'll have multiple rounds of projected ownership that have come in, and we'll be able to kind of hone in on what the industry is thinking about Rory McIlroy. But it's been kind of a weird stretch of golf for him, right? Runner-up finish at the Arnold Palmer, misses the cut at the Players, finishes 3rd, makes a deep run, goes to the Final Four at the Match Play, and then misses the cut at the Masters. Little Jekyll and Hyde. Now, what I will show you here is his history around Quail Hollow is unmatched. The 3 victories, he's got a 5th place finish here last year, T8 in 2019. So basically, he has not finished outside the top 16 since 2011. It's incredible. Now, how incredible is it? Well, I'm going to release this list after I run it on my newsletter that I send out every single week. It's free. RickRunGood.com/newsletter. There's a link in the description. Sign up, whatever. Rory is basically the ultimate course horse for Wells Fargo. If you go back to 2008, there are only 2 other instances of any golfer at any course that have been better than Rory at Quail Hollow. He's gaining it's something outrageous, like 2.8 strokes per round. Actually, I guess I could just show you exactly what it is instead of guessing, but there's only 2 other instances of, did I do both of these? Yeah, I think I did. I think I did the PGA Championship as well. Even if you don't use the PGA Championship, Rory is one of them. He's actually worse if you include the PGA Championship. So if you do just Quail Hollow, in Wells Fargo Championship, it is 2.86 strokes gained per round over 38 rounds. And there are only 2 instances of any golfer at any other course that will beat that. Actually, why don't you guess? So put it in the chat. Since 2008, 2 instances, at least 20 rounds played, so it's not like 4 rounds or anything, of ultimate course horses. Who are they and where is it? They're 2 different golfers at 2 different golf courses. And then I'll email out on Tuesday in my newsletter. I'll have the list of like the top 10 or something like that. But Rory is certainly up there at Quail Hollow. So I'm willing to go back to Rory here. His key metrics for this golf course are obviously insane. He's playing well enough, right? Okay, missing the cut at the Masters is not great. Missing the cut at the Players Championship, obviously not great. But I mean, look at the rest of this, right? How much can I burn him? And he's well rested. It's been a month. Whoa! I just kicked my camera. I hope everything's okay. It's been a month. I'm generally not concerned. Xander Schauffele at 10-7, I think, is interesting. Schauffele, the second highest priced golfer above Patrick Cantlay and Tony Finau. It feels a bit aggressive. I'm not gonna lie. I think I'd rather pay for Cantlay or Finau, which is certainly going to be the kiss of death here. But like, we have to split hairs at the top. I say this every single week. You can't play all of these guys. Xander, to me, is a bit curious. And now if he comes in at like 9% projected ownership, like, sure, let's go. 4th at RBC Heritage, T10 at the Masters, T4 at Zurich with Patrick Cantlay, he's having a great year. The only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the way he's driving the golf ball. There's two ways to look at this. One is very objective, saying since the start of 2023, he has not been nearly as good of a driver as he was in 2022. So in 2023, so far this year, he's a slight losing driver of the golf ball. It's like minus 0.03, something like that. But in 2022, he was gaining a third of a stroke per round. So he is a third of a stroke worse off the tee in 2023 than he is in 2022. Is that concerning? I would say yes. Now, the counter argument to that would be, I say it's concerning, especially on a golf course that is going to require you to be very, very good off the tee. Now, the counter argument is, despite not driving it very well and driving it basically the worst that he has in his career, he's still piling up results. So that's the counter argument. You can decide what side of things that you're on here. I think when you look at someone like Patrick Cantlay, someone like Tony Finau, depending on what those projected ownerships are going to be, I'll be more likely to head towards those guys. Speaking of, let's go to the power rankings here and look at the last 36 rounds, which is the most predictive number of rounds. It is not Tony Finau. It is not Xander Schauffele. It is not Rory McIlroy that has been the best. It's Patrick Cantlay. Patrick Cantlay, the only golfer in this field gaining over 2 strokes per round over his last 36 rounds. Is that surprising? I think it is. And I think it would have taken you a couple guesses to get there. And what we're seeing out of him is nothing short of elite play. And I've talked about this countless times. Remember that he is an equipment free agent. Remember that at the start of the year, he changed clubs. And once he got them figured out, he has been lights out. So it basically started at Riviera. So that is 1, 2, 3. We'll count the match play 4, 5, 6. And then Zurich, we don't have the strokes gain breakdown for, but he finished 4th. So basically 7. So let's do 28 rounds. A little bit of cherry picking, but let's do 28 rounds and sort this by strokes gained ball striking. I'll lower the minimum just a little bit so that make sure we have everybody in here. But we will see that Patrick Cantlay is gaining 2 strokes per round in the ball striking categories. It's by far the best in this field. Alejandro Tosti, we don't have as many rounds, but how about that finish last week? Love to see that. Gary Woodland, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau. Right? That's the list. And of those guys, how many of them are actually gaining with the putter? Cam Young is, Tony Finau is, Patrick Cantlay's basically a 0. Minus 0.01 stroke per round. So I look at Cantlay, who has been getting a lot of, I don't want to say hate. I don't think anyone actually hates Patrick Cantlay, but a lot of conversation around how slow he's playing, how annoying he is, this, that, and the other thing, yada, yada, yada. I see Rory McIlroy. I see Tony Finau. I see Xander Schauffele. Like, what are we going to, I'll just run with Cantlay here. No problem with that. And then Tony Finau, again, I've got a bunch of cool stats coming in my newsletter this week. On a golf course that is going to ask you to be very good in the ball striking categories. He gained 11 strokes ball striking last week. He gained 14 from tee to green. He gained nearly 20 in total. His ceiling is massive. We'll look at his Wells Fargo Championship history because I don't know it off the top of my head. It's actually not that good. So his best finish was T16. That was in 2015. Otherwise, he's really struggled on the second shot. So this is another, again, when you're paying this much for a guy, you don't want there to be red flags or yellow flags or anything like that. This is a pretty big sample size for a guy who is a very good ball striker to be like, why? Like, does this just not fit his eye? Right? Are these second shots to lose strokes on approach, multiple strokes on approach in 4 of your last 5 trips is a little bit concerning to me. Now, if you want to argue he's way better now than he's ever been, sure. But again, you've got to make the decision for yourself where you're going in this 10K range. The 9K range starts with Colin Morikawa at 98, Jordan Spieth 96, Max Homa 94, Fitzpatrick, Hovland, Sungjae, Jason Day. Okay, so what do we want to start with here? Remember, okay, so Max Homa has won this event twice. Remember that he's only won it here once. That's not a knock against him. I'm just reminding you of the history of this event. I think there are a couple of elite ball strikers that stand out. Actually, there's a lot of really elite ball strikers that stand out here. So first off, we'll start with Victor Hovland, $9,200. I obviously try to separate myself from just like rooting for Victor and then looking at this objectively and saying, is his game in a position where he can find success. Well, we already saw the ball striking numbers, right? He is basically the fourth best ball striker, third best ball striker in this field over the last 28 rounds. If you go back a little bit further than that, he might even get better because I think his stretch has actually gone back a little bit further. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, no matter if you do 36 rounds, 25 rounds, whatever, it's basically he's a top 5 ball striker in this field. And that's going to be really valuable. You're seeing this trend here, right? Even at RBC Heritage, where he lost 7 strokes putting and he finished T59, he gained 6 strokes ball striking, gained 6 at the Masters, gained 9 at the Players, almost 10 at Bay Hill. So we say, okay, is he going to lose 7 strokes with the putter? Well, let's look at his history around Quail Hollow, which he's only played this once. He gained 4 strokes putting over those 4 rounds, and he finished T3. So he's only got the 1 trip here, and it was a T3. The ball, he's going to, like, this golf course is going to emphasize ball striking. He's doing it well. He's got good history here. I think if you remove the name, if you remove the picture, we would all agree that that's a pretty good spot. Sungjae Im might be the lost man here, right? Because I think we're going to get a lot of steam for Justin Thomas. I think there's going to be a little bit of steam for Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland. Sungjae Im, 7 strokes gained ball striking at Harbortown, 4 at the Masters, 7 at the Players Championship. The only place he lost recently was the match play, and we know the data is a bit wonky there. From tee to green, he's absolutely phenomenal. He's one of the better putters that we have on tour, or at least one of the better well-rounded guys, and can certainly get hot with that flat stick. He's played here twice. 2019, in which he missed the cut. Finished T31, and then 2021, which he missed the cut. Not great. Am I going to hold it against him? Not particularly. Didn't play this event last year. Also, it wasn't at this golf course, but this is a really good stretch of golf from Sungjae. Over the last 36, let's see where he ranks here. I bet you pretty highly. 9th in this field. Yeah, so 9th in this field in total strokes gained, and basically all of it is coming from his ball striking, which is a really good sight to see. I want to talk about Jordan Spieth here because I think that one thing that I do have to kind of clarify is, yes, I believe this golf course is going to reward great off the tee play, great ball striking, all that fun stuff. Being inaccurate off the tee is not the worst case scenario, right? This is not necessarily... I feel like TPC Potomac last year was a place where, if you were going to miss, you needed to miss small. And being in the rough was pretty penal, and then it started to rain and it was wet and all that nasty stuff. The rough at Quail Hollow doesn't usually get grown out too much. It's like 2 inches of Bermuda. I think that Jordan Spieth is a slight positive off the tee, and he's generally more inaccurate than some of his peers. I don't think that's going to be a major issue. At least wouldn't be the one thing that I'd be like, hey, I've got to rule this guy out. So if we don't rule him out because of that, the rest of the game's been stout, right? I mean, the way he played at Harbortown in a runner-up finish was phenomenal. He gained 8 strokes from tee to green, 7.7 ball striking. So he has gained. So remove the match play because we already talked about that. So his last 4, +4 ball striking, +5.5, +5, +7.7. Runner-up in a T4 and a T3 during that stretch. Even go back to, even Bay Hill, he finished T4, but it was very reliant on the around the green play. Even go back further, Phoenix gained 9 strokes ball striking en route to a T6. And I think the big thing that will keep people away is that he has not played this event in 10 years. Played in 2013, he finished T32. So I do think there is part of it where, like, why hasn't he played this event? Has it been scheduling? This is kind of the time of year where a lot of the Texas events are around it. And maybe it was like, hey, I'm going to play Colonial or I'm going to play Byron Nelson instead of playing this because I want to go back to Texas. But now it's a designated event and he can't really take off, or he doesn't want to. It's a lot of money. So I wonder if it's more of that, or wonder if he does not think this golf course is a good fit for him. Either way, I don't think it's a horrible fit for him. And this is a pretty darn good stat profile otherwise, outside of the inaccuracies off the tee. And I think people are going to look at the lack of history, look down at Homa, who's $200 cheaper, and say, giddy up. They're going to look down at Matt Fitzpatrick, who won a couple of weeks ago and finished runner-up here last year, and say, like, giddy up, right? So I do wonder what people are going to do with Jordan Spieth here. I think he's certainly worth an investment. The $8,000 range. We've got some pretty hot guys in here. Actually, you know what I want to do? I'll show you something on the trends tool first. So what I've actually added this week is another column on this trends tool called strokes gained trend. And the idea behind it, so this tool normally looks at the last 100 rounds, or I'm sorry, any number of rounds that you want, and compares that to each golfer's 100 round baseline, tells you who's hot and who's not, who's playing above their head, who's playing below it. And one of the things that I always kind of go back on is, you look at this and you say, oh, wow, like Dylan Wu over his last 36 rounds is a stroke better than his own baseline. But it's like, yeah, well, Dylan Wu's baseline is lower than Ricky Fowler's baseline is, right? And Ricky Fowler's also very hot. So what I wanted to do was add another column here. So strokes gained trend is what I'm calling it right now, where it basically says, okay, take their baseline, add or subtract the way they're playing right now, and give me like a strokes gain number for all of that, right? So basically, this makes sense, right? So you've got Garrick Higgo, who is way over his head, like the fifth hottest golfer in the field. But the fifth hottest golfer in the field being Garrick Higgo's baseline is only a third of a stroke per round on the positive. It's like it's way lower, right? So if we sort this by strokes gained trend, you get baseline plus how they've been trending, and you get this new cumulative number. So even though Rory McIlroy is actually below his baseline by a third of a stroke per round over his last 36, that is still 1.94 strokes gained per round. It is still the second best strokes gained trend in this field. Think about that. Okay. And that actually is a good conversation. But the thing that sparked it for me, I've thought about it before, but it sparked it last week when I was like, I think I said Tony Finau's B+ game might be better than the vast majority of this field. And this kind of shows that, right? So we've got guys that are trending, guys that are playing above and below their baseline. How can we rank them together? And you'll see, so just the top 5 here: Cantlay, Rory, Finau, Xander, Wyndham Clark. Then you get a couple of movers like that, like Taylor Moore here, right? $7,600. He's at a 1.49 strokes gained trend. That is 2/3 of a stroke over his own baseline plus his baseline to get to 1.5. So the reason I wanted to point this out is because you do get two guys here in the 8K range. Cameron Young, who is just slightly over his baseline right now. He's not even that hot. He's about a quarter of a stroke over his baseline, but that added to his baseline is 1.4 strokes gained per round. It's one of the top numbers. And then same with Ricky Fowler, right? So Ricky Fowler's, 3/4 of a stroke over his own baseline, and it's 1.4 or so in strokes gained trend. So you can mess around with this. I like this as opposed to just saying, yes, Garrick Higgo is one of the hottest players on tour, but even Garrick Higgo at his hottest is like the middle of the pack in this field. Something like that, right? So I like that. So I thought that was cool and wanted to point that out because we have a couple of guys in the 8K range that this applies to. So we'll deep dive Ricky. I think he's going to be incredibly popular this week, and I think it's well warranted. He has obviously been having an unbelievable 2023. He's been piling up top 20 finishes, T15 at the RBC Heritage designated event, T10 at the Texas Open, T13 at the Players. I mean, you just look back. It's basically all top 20s. He's doing it in a very, very sustainable way. And then, by the way, outside of Rory McIlroy, nobody with a sample size large enough has been as good at Quail Hollow as Ricky Fowler has been. 33 rounds, 1.79 strokes gained per round. I'll pull it up for you so you can see what that looks like. And it includes the win here in 2012, a T4 in 2019. He played here last year when he was playing much worse, finished T21. He gained 4 strokes putting that week, lost off the tee. He's much, much better now. You can see the results here for yourself, but it's a very, very good record around this golf course. And obviously Ricky's playing the best golf he's played in a really long time. So he's going to be popular and it's going to be well warranted. I mentioned, if there is a focus of popularity on Justin Thomas, on Ricky Fowler, what are we going to do with Cam Young? What are we going to do with Sam Burns? Both of these guys playing much better as of late. Cam Young went deep at the Masters, finished 7th there, went deep at the match play, finished runner-up. Sam Burns played well at the Zurich with Billy Horschel, played well at the RBC Heritage, is back on track. He talked about, what did he say? He wasn't sick. Was it equipment? There was something that he said that it's like, okay, I've started to figure it out. I think it was a driver. I think it was his driver failed the test at Riviera. And now he's got a new driver in bag and he's got it dialed in. Because these are two guys in theory that when they're playing their best, Young and Burns, I'm speaking of, should be really, really good fits for this place. I'm going to use kind of the 8K range and then the top of the 7K range to kind of talk about two specific guys here and two guys that are just piling up fantasy points. I think it's so easy to forget we are playing a fantasy point game, and a birdie and a bogey is scored differently than two pars. And there are just guys that score more fantasy points than others because of their style of golf. And two of them being Sahith Theegala and Wyndham Clark. Now, I will also point out that they share something in common. They both actually currently have the longest made cut streaks on the PGA Tour. I believe it's 15 for each of them. Wyndham Clark got to 15 last week, the Mexico Open. Sahith did not play. We will start with Sahith here. And again, if I said about Jordan Spieth, where I prefer that you drive it really well, gain strokes off the tee, but I'm not as concerned about accuracy as I am about distance, then that also has to be a positive case to be made for Sahith, who gains strokes off the tee, but generally sprays it. Now, when you look at the rest of his game, it's hard for me to say, like, what is Sahith really good at, right? You know, he gained 7 strokes on approach at Riviera, and 2 starts later, he lost 5 at TPC Sawgrass. And then his next start, in just 3 matches at Austin Country Club, he gains 4 strokes on approach. I mean, he's kind of all over the place. And it's the same story with the putter. He can lose 4, he can gain 5 in back-to-back weeks. Around the green, he can lose 3, gain 5.5 in back-to-back weeks. It is the only thing that he is generally consistent at is he's generally a positive driver and that he will find a way. That's kind of the other part about this. And he's found a way in every event since Sanderson Farms, which is the last time he's missed a cut. And he's got a bunch of top 15s in there as well. So he is one of the more difficult guys to predict. And then Wyndham Clark, who we have tracked a lot this year. But let me show you something else. So if you go to the Holy Grail, go to fantasy data and sort this by strokes gained, DraftKings points gained. So DraftKings points gained the same thing as strokes gained, right? It looks at the average for each week. And did you score more than that? You gained. Did you score less? You lost. And the idea is, doesn't matter if it's the US Open, doesn't matter if it's the Barbasol. We're starting with the average. So it kind of figures itself out. What do you see here? Well, of guys that have a sample size, let's call it 10. This is since the start of the 2023 season. Let's call it 10 starts. Patrick Cantlay's number 1. Xander Schauffele's up here. Rory McIlroy does not have enough round of events to qualify. He's got 7. Here's Wyndham Clark, right behind Max Homa. He's above Cameron Young. He has gained 24 fantasy points on average per start this season. And if you sort it by date, he has not lost fantasy points to the field since Las Vegas, the Shriners, which is the last time he missed the cut. Scroll down a little bit further, and here's Sahith, who has actually, on average, gained more fantasy points per start than Sam Burns has. And in his last 3, he's gained 46 fantasy points, 44 fantasy points, 29 fantasy points. These guys score fantasy points, right? And why is that? Well, Sahith makes more birdies or better than Sam Burns. You know, you look at Wyndham Clark. He actually does not make as many birdies or better as some of his peers. He actually makes more than Rory, but he gives it back, and Rory's got a smaller sample size. But I just want to point those two guys out. You talk about fantasy, and I will say this: I've been standing for Wyndham Clark this year, and I just love this guy, right? I mean, he did not have. I'll just show you. Strokes gained by round. We'll go to Wyndham Clark. He did not have a good opening round at Mexico. He lost 3 strokes to the field. And that, I mean, he could have just gone home, right? Like, I haven't missed the cut since Vegas. I've had an unbelievable run. I'm going to go to a designated event next week and play for $20 million. Why don't I just go home? No. He battles back, gains 3.7 strokes to the field on Friday, including he has to make birdie on 18. Now, 18 is an easy hole at Vedanta, but he has to make a 13-foot birdie putt to make the cut. He does. Makes the cut on the number. Then he gains 5 strokes to the field over the course of the weekend and finishes T24. He could have gone home. Didn't. Shout, Wyndham Clark. So those two guys are kind of similar in the 7K range. They've got a lot of the same stuff going, or in the Sahith is in the 8K range, and Wyndham Clark kind of kicks off the 7K range. So the 7K range is pretty stacked, as they tend to be in the designated events here. So where have we seen Keith Mitchell's name before? Well, he showed up on the course adjusted course fit model. Where have we seen him before as well? Well, he finished third here in 2021. He finished 8th in 2019. Great. Those are the last 2 times this event was played at Quail Hollow. Missed the cut in 2022. That was TPC Potomac. Coming off a 6th place finish at the Zurich when he played with not Bo Hostler. I'm just thinking of 2 Visor guys. Who did Keith Mitchell play? Oh, Sung J M. Apologies. Sung J M at the Zurich Classic. So he's $7,800. Who else have we seen? Okay, by the way, I try to make notes of this. Like, who have I seen? Right? Okay, let me show you something real quick. So this is my newsletter from last week from the Mexico Open. And when I start going through this process, I try to make mental notes of the names that I see over and over and over again. And one of the names that I saw a lot of last week. So this is the newsletter I sent out. So let's see. Looking for long irons, right? Like, okay, here are the names that we have: John Rahm, Will Gordon, Emiliano Grillo. Here is weak fields, guys who play well in weak fields. Okay. John Rahm, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo. Let's see what else we have here. Paspalum. Okay. Tony Finau, Alex Smalley, Patrick Rogers, Emiliano Grillo, right? Like every way we kind of sliced it last week, Emiliano Grillo's name kept coming up. And I always try to take note of that. And of course, I played him. I didn't have enough of him, but he was in the optimal lineup. He finished 5th. He had a great week. So when names keep popping up like that, so Keith Mitchell's name popping up a little bit, Taylor Moore's name keeps popping up, right? We saw him on the trends. We saw him as a decent ball striker. We saw him in the power rankings a little bit, right? For relative to what his price is. Taylor Moore has been phenomenal. He finished T4 at the Zurich Classic. I cannot remember who his partner was off the top of my head, but before that, T11 at the RBC Heritage. That was a designated event. T19 T39 at the Masters. He won the Valspar. Even going back a little bit further, go back to Farmers. He has 4, 5, 6 top 15 finishes, including a win. Drives it well. Ball striking is there. Has he played this event before? Yes, but it wasn't here. T64 at TPC Potomac. Again, just a name that keeps popping up, I try to take note of. I want to also show you this. Patrick Rogers, $7,500. I've not looked this up yet, but I am going to guess that Patrick Rogers had one of the better weekends last week. So I'll go to the live leaderboard here, do rounds 3 and 4. Yeah, John Rahm gained 10.7 strokes on the weekend, which included decimating the course record. Tony Finau gained 7.6. The only other 2 guys who gained more than 6 were Emiliano Grillo and Patrick Rogers. Patrick Rogers got better every single round last week. It was like 71, 69, 68, 64, something like that, right? It was really, really good. I don't think it was 64. I don't know what it was, but a really good weekend for Patrick Rogers. And I like that, right? Get a little momentum. This is a golf course that should also reward his strengths, right? Now, it's not Paspalum. It's not, some of the other things that we've seen, but look at his ball striking, right? And we said the same thing last week. He has now gained 19 strokes ball striking in his last 3 starts, and he's gaining everywhere else as well. Patrick Rogers, it's not likely to be here because of the strength of field, but Patrick Rogers seems like he is on the verge. Now, he's knocked a couple times previously. It hasn't opened for him, but certainly worth noting. The other one is a guy we've talked about a lot, Hayden Buckley, right? Hayden Buckley slumped a bit, has broken out of that slump, and I still love to see that even during the slump, he kept his elite skill set, right? So this 4 straight missed cuts, he gained strokes off the tee in every single one of those and hasn't lost strokes off the tee since the Valero Texas Open of 2022. Gained 6 strokes on approach the last time we saw him at RBC Heritage. Played well at the Zurich Classic, but we don't get the strokes game breakdown there. He finished T26. Around the green, I'm a little bit concerned. I said you have to have at least, I would prefer an average to above average around the green. But again, this should be a place that sets up really well for him because of his strengths off the tee. Played this event last year, missed the cut, was not here. It was at TPC Potomac. So keep that in mind. I think you got to consider Hayden Buckley once again. Just in terms of raw ball striking, Gary Woodland's probably the best guy in the 7K range, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise to you. He gained another 9 strokes ball striking last week in Mexico and lost 7 with the putter. Possible, right? It's possible that he cannot out-hit his putter. That is possible. Now, if you look at how he has putted here, you could find reason to be a little bit optimistic. So 2021, last time this event was played at Quail Hollow, he gained 3.5 strokes putting, finished 5th. He withdrew in 2019. I do not remember why, or when during the round, or during the event, but he gained 1.5 strokes putting that week as well. So his last 2 trips to Quail Hollow, he's gained over 5 strokes putting. Maybe it sets up well for him. Maybe they're outliers. Maybe it was random, but that would be the key to unlock a really good finish for Gary, because there are no other concerns with this game. It is just whether or not he's going to lose 5 strokes with the flat stick. It does feel like there's a pretty good drop off from the 7K range to the 6K range. When you start looking through these names, Joseph Brownwood had a nice week last week in Mexico. Is he going to be able to follow that up? Question mark. Will Gordon, I think, is kind of the most interesting. He drives it really well. He's coming off the 24th place finish in Mexico. Does that break him out of a little mini slump? I think it's possible. Eric Cole, who is, not particularly long off the tee, not particularly accurate off the tee, just kind of one of these guys who finds a way to get it done. If you look at just pure strokes gain, raw strokes gain, there's only a handful of guys here in the 6K range that are gaining over a stroke per round. Eric Cole is one of them. Dylan Wu, I mean, I'll pull up his profile. We talk about him all the time, but why is anyone never not playing Dylan Wu every single week? He's always super cheap and he plays well. He missed the cut at Zurich. It was a team event. Who cares? Outside of that, he hadn't missed a cut since Farmers. Had a couple of top 25s in there. The game is clearly trending, clearly rounding into form. I love his game. And he finished strong last week as well. I don't know what his weekend was, like the 1, 2, 3, 4th best weekend out of anybody. I like that. Dylan Wu, love it. I saw Harry Hall's name there, which sparked the Akshay thought for me. Akshay's at the bottom of the 7K range, but I'll circle back for 1 second here, because we heard on the broadcast that Harry Hall taught or told Akshay to use the aim point on the putting greens, a way to read greens. And he goes from, being one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour to gaining 5 strokes putting last week. Now, is it luck? Is it randomness? Is it paspalum greens? I mean, we know that Akshay plays well in tropical places. You can see the runner-up finish in Puerto Rico. We don't have the strokes gained putting metrics from that week. Actually, I guess I could just look up. I'll do that for you guys. I'll look up other putting stats. Where did he play well on the Corn Ferry? Like Bahamas, he won Great Exuma. He almost defended it the following year. He might just like these tropical, paspalum golf courses. Let me look up his Puerto Rico putting numbers. So Akshay had 104 putts. He had 81 putts on 49 greens in regulation. That was tied for 43rd. They don't keep enough stats for these. It's hard to say whether that was good or not. Oh, look at me. I'm out of focus. I was hoping to learn something about whether that was just a one-off random great putting week or something that we can expect, and I'm not sure I learned anything. The rest of the 6K range, let's just sort this by strokes gained total, last 36, and see what pops up. As I mentioned, there's only a handful of guys here that are over 1 stroke per round. It's actually only 2. Eric Cole, Dylan Wu. Harry Hall deserves a look, right? Because it's so hard to get Harry Hall into your lineups because of how he plays. He's such a great putter. He's kind of reliant on it, but he gained 2.4 off the tee in Mexico. He gained 1.5 at Valspar off the tee. The approach play is a little bit concerning, but man, he's so darn good on and around the putting surfaces, and he's got some good finishes. It's hard to rule a guy like this out, but when you model it, he never gets into any lineups. Alejandro Tosti, how about that? That was pretty good last week. He's back at it. He earns his way into this field thanks to the top 10 from last week. And really good metrics, right? This is the kind of player that we thought he was last week. It's going to be a lot harder this time around, right? This is not a Mexico Open field. I love his game, right? But I think we got to temper expectations a little bit here. If he finished T27, I think we'd be thrilled with that result. But he's $6,500 and he's playing pretty darn good golf right now. He's got a smaller sample size than everybody else, but he is basically the best player from tee to green in the 6K range and was really, really impressive last week. Let's model and see what else we can find. Here's the custom model, RickRunGood.com. Wells Fargo Championship. We got this bad boy loaded in here. All right, what do we want to do for this week? Let me think. We're obviously going to need off the tee and approach play. So let's do strokes gained off the tee last 36 for 15. Strokes gained approach last 36. Well, we'll do 10. And then what I'll actually do for you sickos out there is I'll do the longer buckets, 175 to 200 and 200 to 225, 5 on each of those. So we have a strokes gained approach that is now worth 25 and kind of spread out in a couple different ways. Around the green, I want you to be slightly positive, right? So here's what I'll do is I will do strokes gained around the green last 50 for 8. Strokes gained putting last 24, 8. I also want to do a little bit of strokes gain distribution, how often they gain. I'll do it like this: 2, 3, 4, and 5 strokes. And I'll put a little bit on each one of those to get access to those because I love them so much. I will do some course history, obviously. I think Quail Hollow plays pretty good every year. So let's do strokes gained Quail Hollow here for 10. And then I like the distance and long irons of Torrey Pines. So we'll put, where are you? Strokes gained Torrey Pines, 5 there. And we'll do probably Bay Hill as well for some comps. So we've got 21 left. We could do long courses and hard courses, 5 on each one of those. We've got 11 left. This is like the biggest model I've ever done. I should probably save this so that I don't forget it. What else have we not done? We've got 11 left. Let's do... Oh, we could do bogey avoidance. That's kind of fun. Let's do 5 on bogey avoidance, 6 on fantasy points gained. I'm going to save this before I forget. So 2023 Wells Fargo Championship. So we can revisit this on Wednesday if we need to. My number 1 golfer. Wow, it's super tight at the top. I guess that's probably because I use so many different metrics. But Rory McIlroy, number 1. Tony Finau, number 2. Basically no surprise there. Sung Jae, 3. Love to see it. Xander, 4. Cantlay, 5. Victor, 6. Justin Thomas, 7. Jason Day, 8. Ricky Fowler, 9. Homa, 10. Wow. What else do we have here? Corey Connors, 7,900, and he's 15. Gary Woodland is 7,600, and he's 17th. Jordan Spieth, unfortunately, does not get a very good grade. 9,600, he is 16th. Interesting. Just kind of scrolling through. Patrick Rogers, he's 7,500, 22nd. That's pretty good. Emiliano Grillo, 7,400, he's 20th. Fitzpatrick got a pretty bad grade, 27th. Keith Mitchell got a decent 130. Just trying to see the outliers real quick. Tom Kim did not get a good grade. Alejandro Tosti, 48th at $6,500 that's a pretty darn good grade. Interesting. Okay, well maybe that was too many inputs, but I got a little excited about it. So I saved it. We can mess around with that a little bit more on Wednesday's live chat. I will send out my email newsletter on Tuesday with more stats and nuggets. Make sure you follow that. You can subscribe, rickrungood.com/newsletter. There's a link in the description. You can subscribe to rickrungood.com. We are in a season of just absolute massive events. And appreciate your guys' support. Talk to you soon.